All right, acting President Yemi Osinbajo has urged leaders across the country to speak out against his speech and divisive comments.
Yes, indeed, that hate speech. Now, he gave the charge while addressing leaders from the southeast at the State House and appealed to them not to hide under any ethnic or religious platform to support comments that divide the nation.
And we certainly warn that this report by Maria Olasheinde contains scenes with flash photography.
The federal government is not relenting on its efforts to ensure Nigeria remains a peaceful place for its citizens to live. Acting President Yemi Osinbajo kicked off with a series of consultations with leaders from the north. The meeting continues with leaders of thoughts from the southeast. Osinbajo said these consultations are extremely necessary because sometimes wars don't start with bullets, but it begins with words and hateful speeches.
I firmly believe that we ought to address these agitations and proclamations urgently and decisively. Burying our heads in the sand and expecting the storm to blow over of their own accord is not an option. But equally not reasonable is falling for the temptation for any kind of tit for tat, whether it is language used or is in the kinds of gestures that have been expressed. This has never worked or moved anyone closer to a peaceful or sensible resolution.
Attending this meeting are leaders of the National Assembly, governors of the 5 southeastern states, as well as service chiefs and some ministers. It is a meeting Osinbajo believes is very crucial to press upon leaders of the region that violence and war will do no one any good.
History has shown us, especially contemporary history, that wars today hardly ever end. They just simply go on. Indeed, you're all aware of the Igbo proverb that says that a man who rushes into battle does not realize that battle entails death. We are witnesses to the unspeakable devastation that war continues to inflict across the world. No one who has seen the horrors of war, even merely on television, would wish it on their worst enemy.
The southeastern leaders give assurances that they will be able to carry the message back to their people, including those presently agitating for a separate homeland on the need for peace.
The meeting was not about IPOB. It's about to stress the need for the security of lives and properties of our people, Nigerians all over Nigeria, and to stress the need for a united, honest and fair and equitable Nigeria.
The acting president, Yemi Osinbajo, made it clear at this meeting that anyone found culpable making divisive speeches will be met with the full force of the law. Maria Olasheinde, TVC News, Abuja.
All right, that's the background to our discussion. Now, we have the national president of the Igbo Youth Congress, Bright Eziocha, in the studio with us right now. Thank you for coming on the program.
Good morning.
Right.
Good morning, viewers.
And we have on Skype from Kaduna, Khalifa Dikwa, a Northern Elder and social political analyst. Khalifa, it's good to have you join us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, viewers.
All right. Now, Bright, let me start with you here. We all understand it's no longer news, all the agitations out there and all the comments out there and so on. But let me bring it to the basis. The call for Biafra or the call for any kind of agitation from the East, do you think it is misunderstood by other Nigerians?
Completely, I believe that the Nigerian people do not understand what these young men are agitating for.
Okay.
Before now, some of us have always called for a dialogue. We've called for a conference, and we've had so many conferences. During the pro-NARCO days, we were actively involved. We listed out those things we felt are abnormal as it's concerned in the Igbo, in the federating unit called Nigeria. And since then till now, it seems like just leaders are not taking this talk. Of course, they are calling it talk show because nobody listens to anybody. Nobody wants to listen. If it gets to a point, some of us begin to get tired of this agitating for the Southeast interest in the Nigerian unit. And then, when you look at the recent sit-at-home called by the IPOB and the MASSOP, I don't believe that was not the first time that we are calling for sit-at-home. But we need to ask ourselves a question. Why was the recent one very successful more than the previous ones? We've had a situation where MASSOP called for sit-at-home, people will ignore them, open their businesses, and in fact, they try to enforce it and may not be able to enforce it, even without the security men. But this time around, nobody enforced anything, nobody called anybody, everybody decided to sit at home and allow the day to pass by. It's because everybody, this agitation is getting to everybody now. Not just those that are agitating, but other people those who also believe that Ndibo are being marginalized in the Nigerian state. Everybody seems to be embracing this call.
All right. I like the word marginalization that has resonated so many times. Anyway, before we come back, I'd like Ngozi to go,
yes,
but I'll come back to you on this.
Well, we might have to go on a quick news update before we continue our discussion.
No, we have the powers to go ahead. We have
permission to go ahead with our guests. Okay, let me take this question then to Khalifa, who is in Kaduna. Now, the call to Ndibo to quit the North by October 1 actually emanated from Kaduna by the so-called Coalition of Northern Youth. Now, what do you think really is fundamental to this call? I mean, the Southeasterners, represented by IPOB, are calling for secession. The Northerners are saying Ndibo should leave. And you have an acting president who is saying that whoever is a purveyor of hate speech will be dealt with decisively. What is at the root of all of this?
First of all, this particular thing is a false flag. Has been on for some time, and that it's just a false flag. Those who are agitating have never known war. I am from Borno. I know what a war means. Right now, what is happening on the ground is terrible, and whatever report that is being given is below the real events downtown. Me, having lived with the Igbo, I know the Igbos are peaceful people and loving people, really, and that the agitation has to do with a particular mindset of the younger ones copying the so-called First Amendment of America. Most of them are just have that ecstasy of moving or behaving like the American way of saying anything, because in America, hate speech is protected by law. And we are, in Nigeria and America, we are two poles apart, in that we have our own culture and we are a religious state. There it is different. And therefore, let me say that most of the time, these things come up during democracy. And this goes to the fact that if leaders, both traditional and political leaders, will really talk to their own youngsters, do what the youngsters want, and so on, and then apply or use the monies appropriated for the development of the area, employing them, fixing the basic infrastructure, and so on, all these calls wouldn't have come up, because in the first instance, ideally, all these questions are thrown at the federal government or at the North. Ideally, are supposed to be thrown at their leaders first, because money was sunk. And to the North, this is the first time the North is now responding. The boys just decided to say enough of insult. And when you look through the social media and so on, I lived with the Igbos. I know that the typical Igbo man is also those who live and think like Americans or British and so on, are fond of using certain words carelessly. And secondly, they have the tendency of pulling even their own. For instance, now I say government, during the government of Osinbajo, for instance, that seat by the Senate President from the Igbo race. And each time another Senate President was elected, another one was pulled and so on. They pulled them all until they exhausted their quota, until it fell on David Mark and so on. This is something typical of a thing that the boys now, we've been talking to them, and if you are careful, anything positive about federal government now, you write it, even if it's an Igbo man who writes it, you find that Igbo young boys from all over the world will write negative things about it, and directly they insult directly the head of state. They don't have that particular...
All right, Khalifa, we'll come back to you shortly. Bright, you talked about marginalization earlier on. Now, an average youth in Sokoto, for instance, would still talks about marginalization. The average person from Otukpo in Benue State talks about marginalization. Even here in Lagos, people talk about marginalization. In Port Harcourt, it's the same thing. In Maiduguri, it's the same thing. So, when it comes to the understanding of what the Nigerian state is, the young people calling for secession because of marginalization, do they really have an understanding of what the whole state is going through?
I would like to put it in this perspective. There's two types of marginalization.
Okay.
The rich are marginalizing the poor in Nigeria, which cut across all ethnic nationalities. But when you talk about ethnic marginalization, it's worse to the Igbo nations. Okay, for instance, when you talk about Nigeria today, almost all these 6 geopolitical zones have more than 6 to 7 states. So only the Southeast that have just 5. We have agitated, we have done everything humanly possible to address this injustice. Even during time of Obasanjo, we're almost at the point that we believe that
we all knew the story of how things went.
Nothing happened.
But we all know the story of how things went.
I'm coming. Nothing happened. If Nigeria state is determined to give Igbo state, Igbo nation, another extra state, nothing will stop Nigerians. Because I believe before the pre-trial election, the constitution was amended more than 3 times to accommodate the political interest. Why can't they amend the constitution to accommodate the Southeast with extra state? Nothing was done about that.
Will that extra state solve the problem? Is that what
I'm coming. I'm just giving instances.
Okay.
One of the things that the Igbo are agitating for. Year in, year out, go through the budget. The Southeast have the least allocation on capital development. Go to the Southeast, and the worst of it all was this present administration. Before the election, Nigeria was sharply divided into 2, between the North and the Southeast and South-South. We were thinking that the president, being a statesman, immediately after he took over government, we was going to address this sharp division. Some of us even had the guts to call a press conference, asked him to consider a national reconciliation committee, because we knew Nigeria was sharply divided, that Nigeria was sitting in a keg of gunpowder.
Now, based on that, government is saying that it is determined to ensure the unity of the country along constitutional dictates.
It's not mere words. It's not mere words, because when you speak something, follow it up with action. We see a president who immediately was elected, he supported the sharp division, saying that he will not treat 95% that gave him, the people that gave 95% vote equal with the people that gave him 5%. And it's not just mere words, he carried it up with actions. After that, he began to appoint people.
But when it comes to appointment, Bright, let us face the fact. The point there is that the federal character principle is a federal document. And when you follow the federal character principle, it says that ministers and appointees, states have to be represented on equal basis. And that was the basis. All ministers in the federal government come from each of this. There's no state in the federation that doesn't have a representation.
Go and look at the history of this country. This is the first time that a particular tribe or a section will be highly marginalized in terms of appointment. Look at all the appointments that have been done so far in this present administration. Look at the ratio. What percentage do Southeast have? It's not just a mere word, but he carried in action. And these young men are watching. Every time there is an appointment, you will see it on the Facebook, on the internet, you see will be spreading, and people will be asking questions, okay, why are people not here?
Okay.
Let's look at the security arrangement today. There's no single Igbo man.
That's understood. Now, Khalifa Dikwa, let's see if we can chart a way forward. How can Nigeria overcome this mutual suspicion? 50 years after the Civil War, even Dim Ojukwu himself, the late Ojukwu himself, said in an interview that the first Civil War, yes, that was done, but the second one would not make sense. How can Nigeria get over this to actually achieve a Nigerian nation?
Just it is easy. It is sincerity and accountability from the leadership. Leadership, i.e. that this young man who is talking about marginalization, you couldn't have just eating your cake and at the same time having voted for the PDP, except for Imo, and you expect positions to be that you simply because you think you are marginalized. The meaning is not so, because I lived in Anambra in 1985 as NYC. I know the people and all these agitations from there. It is just not here nor there. It is just there. And I see federal government ought to just say the same law applies to everyone. Until these boys talked about Ndibo should Brexit, or we call it Biafrexit. They talked about enough of insult and so on. If we don't like Nigeria and you call it zoo, and the young boy that a few of them were following was out and inside. And those of us who are professors now know we have students all over the world and we know the interactions and so on. It is a script that is out from there, from outside, and it is attached to this particular scenario that we have as Boko Haram. That is about envy about Nigeria's role in Africa, to pull it down, and they can do anything for that. Therefore, we have to say that the states that he is talking about since 1999, has anybody created any state? All the states were created by the military that they so much hate, and they don't even recognize the constitution. And can we work on vacuum? Those military, once they are outside, they are civilians like us. The thing is, why rejecting anything about Nigeria? This narcissism that they harbor, they have to let it go. The leaders, the political and traditional rulers, have to talk to their kids. Up north here, we have a way of talking to them. Until recently, the boys were afraid to even reply to bad comments.
But so does it solve the situation? Does it solve the problem if Ndibo are asking for secession, and on the other hand, you have northern youth who are saying, yes, you can have your Biafra if you will? How does that solve the problem? But before we allow you to answer this question, let's bring in Foladele. I think she's ready to give us an idea of what Nigerians are saying about this one.
They are saying a lot. Hi again, Mike and Ngozi. Yeah. Good morning, Bright. Good morning, Khalifa. I have to say, Khalifa made a very interesting point about, which I've heard other people make, about those agitating have never known war. And I've heard some people say that. But let's see what other people are saying online. RPG says, so many people think at Prof. Osinbajo can be cowed. This man has something we don't know yet. Good move, though. Kennedy Omolara says, if someone could donate freely, why can't the hospital keep it safely? I think they've mixed up. Sorry, that is my tweet said jamming together. This is the right one. Abraham says, I appreciate our humble acting president's commitment to one Nigeria. However, I want to state that restructuring this country is best. Uche Oyema says, it's a shame that in 2017, Nigerians still speak of tribes and indigents rather than nationality. It feels more like 1917. Jude Ekwedike says, yes, we must address hate speech and cage all those who have been instigating violence against people who express themselves. Uche Oyema says, it's sad that Barack became US president, Sadiq London mayor, Chuka could be British prime minister, but Tunde can't be governor of Kano, nor Musa governor of Imo. Mazi Chinedu says, first things first, we must start behaving like humans. Humans use referendum to reach agreements and not war. Biafrans ask for referendum. Okay, right. I really quickly want to go back to the tweet before this one. Someone saying Tunde can be president of Tunde can't be president of Kano, or Shola president of Imo. However I put it. What do you think about that tweet?
I don't think we have gotten to that level where a Tunde can be a governor in Imo State, because the first question you ask yourself is, will a Tunde be accepted in Imo, or will Igbo be accepted in the Southwest? We saw the outcry when some Igbos were elected in the Southwest. It caused a lot of problems.
Yeah, but currently we have
yes,
Igbos
we have. I appreciate that because we are a democracy. Like I wanted to reply the man that talked about democracy, and they will try to copy America. We're in a democracy. When you practice democracy, freedom of speech is allowed. Freedom of association is allowed. You have the right to protest whatever you are not satisfied with. I'm not going to be cowed because somebody from up north do not appreciate you expressing yourself the way you really want. So when Igbo is demonstrating their right to free speech, when they are demonstrating their right to freedom that the democracy guarantees them, I don't expect the kind of reaction we got from
all right, time is really not on our side, right? But Fola, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
I wonder if this is not a failure of leadership and an education sector, an educational sector that has not been able to provide some kind of direction. Like history is missing in our schools.
Well, some of us, I'm a student of history.
Yes.
I study history in Lasso. And having gone through history, I also come to terms with the fact that when nations fail to learn from their history, from their past, they are bound to make a serious mistake. And such mistakes are not forgivable. People have argued that, let me put it this way, no nation survived civil war twice. And again, there is this belief that perhaps if there should be another civil war, then the Igbo will be worse for it. We shouldn't even think about it. We shouldn't even dream of it. I must commend the president for providing the leadership Nigeria needed at this point in time. Because this was what we expected the president, Buhari, to have done from the early stage of his administration, to consult with people, to meet leaders, to find a way forward. Because I don't
moving forward, right?
Now that
because we're rounding off right now. But moving forward, what tactics do you think that the Igbo youth should change, and how should they engage the Nigerian people so that they don't create more suspicion, but then still put their agitation on the front burner?
Honestly speaking, if you ask me, I don't think this should be to Ndi Igbo, but this to be the leadership of this nation. This kind of consultation.
No.
I'm coming. This kind of consultation.
The point there is we all have roles to play in here.
Yes.
So everybody has an obligation. Everybody has a responsibility. So I'm talking about responsibility from that perspective.
Some of us have started calling those that are listening to us that perhaps we have an acting president who is willing and who have a listening ear, who is trying to do something to solve this problem. I also want to commend the Senate leadership for calling for the 2014 National Dialogue document to be submitted to them. I also pray that they should be able to act quickly on it, to be able to douse tension. Because there's high tension, there's serious tension in the nation. And if we don't do something now, all of us may not be able to stand what we have.
Right. Eziocha, President, Igbo Youth Congress. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you, my brother.
And Khalifa Dikwa, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Even though we didn't have much time to dwell on all the issues, but we must thank you for being part of this program right now.
Thank you. So you ought to have given me the last word.
All right.